And we have a resume of nonsense, of just complete ridiculousness. And I also like the smell of cow shit. That's America. But there was nothing feminine about it. I just wanted to make my own cake. What could be better? My mom and dad, they look at each other and they go, that was cute. And I was like, that was a fucking nightmare for me. And now I got to go sleep on a boat. I love the slow burn of the first scene of Inglourious Basterds. Nobody grows up and says, oh, I want to make bombs when I grow up. So in a way, I feel like we're responsible for the Frugal Gourmet's downfall, my friends and I, because we channeled something deep and dark one night. Coffee and cigarettes. It's the Breakfast of Champions. Memorable Dead show would be October 15th, 1983, Hartford, Connecticut, with Joe Winnie. I was prolific in getting parking tickets, though. It was fabulous, but it was also disturbing. These are good questions because these are literally things I think about. Smell that makes me nostalgic. Honeysuckles to me is the most special smell that takes me way back. I love them so much. And I look forward to it every year. There's also, the twisted nostalgia of like the smell of Penn Station when you get off the train. It's like, what is it? It's not healthy, but it is what it is, and I know where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? I like that smell. And I also like the smell of cow shit. Driving down the highway and you smell cow shit, that's America. Pile of cow shit on the highway. A fond food memory would be making the chicken liver bourbon pate with Rachel, my daughter, who was probably like 5 at the time. So many of them, Russ and Daughters with Rachel, God, it goes way, 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 way back. My first paella, I like to think of like a food epiphany, rather than, not just food memories, but what were the things that like turned you on to the whole culinary world and made you think that the world is a bigger place than you thought. It's where I learned about how to try things, or where I learned to be tolerant or experiential or want to do different things. It was through food. That was my entrance point to the rest of the world and life. But food was my gateway to living and to a different way of seeing humanity and the world and being open. Food memory was, I was a little kid, I was probably like 5, and I wanted an easy bake oven because it was like, that's the ultimate toy. Who wouldn't want that? Bake your own cake, you ice it, you eat it. I thought that was fabulous. But my parents were like, nope, that's like, we're not doing that because it's a feminine thing. They never said that, but I knew. And but there was nothing feminine about it. I just wanted to make my own cake. What could be better as a toy? Fucking Matchbox, let it roll down it's pointless. But a cake, that's a fucking payoff, man. Right. I want that toy. When my daughter Rachel was born and we started cooking, people are like, oh, get her a little, like, nah, she's working with real shit. She's gonna work with real oven mitts and a real rolling pin, none of this toy stuff. We're gonna get right into it, and that's what we did. I bonded with Rachel because I couldn't do other things able-bodied people could do. So in the kitchen was a way that we were able, that's where we meet. Right. That's where we, where our ideologies mesh. Food is also how I communicate with people. You know, it's an opportunity to share, and it's an experience. What movie have I seen the most? Is Jaws, because Jaws was the most impactful film at the right time, I think, of a lot of people's lives. But that specifically, I was living on a boat at that time, and I was 9 or 10 years old. Thank you.
Of course.
But I was living on a boat, and my parents took me to see Jaws on Long Beach Island. And I almost shit myself when I saw the head fall into that hole in the boat, you know, when Hooper was getting the tooth. And I was absolutely terrified and enthralled at the same time. And then at the end of the film, my mom and dad, they look at each other and they go, "That was cute." And I was like, that was a fucking nightmare for me. And now I got to go sleep on a boat. So I'm sleeping on a boat, waiting for the shark's head to just plow right through the side of the boat. And, you know, in the summertime, you know, it was magic. Favorite movie scene? Well, I'm going to have to say that I love the slow burn of the first scene of Inglourious Bastards. I just think that's just fabulous. Oh my God, Christoph Waltz and the Frenchman and his family. Oh
my gosh,
freaking fabulous. Just at the lighting of the cigar, the best slow burn in cinematic history, in my opinion. Well, Japan is the place that was my first time out of the country. So that was a big turning point. That was where I learned that I love to travel and wake up in a completely different place and think to myself, this is fucking cool, you know. Japan's very special. I learned a lot. But the most important thing that I learned from Japan, and it's become more poignant as I've grown up and had, you know, a disability, is that receiving gracefully is the hard part. You know, we're not used to receiving gracefully or acknowledging. When you receive something from somebody, you should acknowledge that this person made an effort, and you should pause and acknowledge that. And so as my health declines and my abilities decline, I need help more, right? So I'm in a position where I need people's help, and I can't be too proud, right? Don't be too proud to receive. You know, it's important for the person giving you sometimes. You know, they're doing it because they care, or they're a decent person, or they genuinely want to help, and you shouldn't be angry about your predicament, but it forces you to step outside of your own situation and see the goodness in people and to treat people with respect. What annoys me the most about people these days is that people they're more interested in making money than what it is that they're doing to make the money. You know, like if you're in the defense business, you're just following the money. Nobody grows up and says, "Oh, I want to make bombs when I grow up." You know, it's like you're just doing something because you want the money. You know, and at what point do you say, you know, well, it's just a job? No, it's not. It's saying something about your values, that you value money more than humanity or life or helping people. You know, but you take the money. The Frugal Gourmet. The Frugal Gourmet was a guy that really did make some good cookbooks. And we had a cardboard cutout of him, and we burned him in effigy. And then his downfall began. So in a way, I feel like we're responsible for the Frugal Gourmet's downfall, my friends and I, because we channeled something deep and dark one night, and people were there to see it and document it, and it was real. And I feel guilty about it. It's a daily battle, being disabled. But the biggest lie I tell myself is that I'm useless, or that I'm not worth anything, or self-pity. And so I struggle with that a lot. I have to recalibrate because there's, I can't judge myself on what I was able to do 10 years ago. Those rules are out the window. Those criteria and metrics, they're irrelevant. So why judge myself as though I'm the same person I was 10, 20 years ago, expecting the same output, same productivity, same abilities. I was able to accomplish and do a lot of stuff, multitasking all over the place. It was really crazy. And then it stops. And it's like, now what? So you have to reinvent yourself. You have to work through things. That being in a state of happiness is not like turning a switch and you enter eternal happiness and bliss. It's actually something that you need to manage and practice. And it dawned on me when I'm like, wait a minute, where do monks live? Monks live in monasteries. Why are they practicing? Because they need to. Because they are no different than us. They have tools that they use to manage their state of being. Coffee and cigarettes. It's the breakfast of champions. That's how I started my days in college. Coffee, cigarettes, and a guitar. It's either coffee and cigarettes, coffee, weed, and cigarettes, but it was always a combination of those. And that was breakfast. And it was also time to ponder and be creative, that's what that was. And I realized that that was, in its own sick way, a form of pause and meditation. It's just, it kills you. That's the only downside. Your lifestyle in your 20s. Irresponsible, having fun, lost, totally lost, but living and feeling really, I would feel really warm. I would wake up or be in a moment where, oh my God, like I can do whatever I want. And that made me feel really good. Memorable Dead show would be October 15th, 1983, Hartford, Connecticut with Joe Winnie, where we drove to Hartford in our senior year of high school, and which was amazing because Mom and Dad, I'm going to go. Can I take Friday off so I can go see the Dead in Connecticut? And, oh yeah, okay. So me and Joe went up there and we saw two great shows. But the second one of that weekend, the 15th, which may have been Bob Weir's birthday, and he got a new guitar that weekend, I think. But also was when they did St. Stephen. They did it a couple nights before in the Garden, and then they did it again in Hartford. And I never saw anything like that. The place just lit up. I mean, it was so intense. And that was incredible. So I literally commemorate that date every year with Joe somehow, of like, 40 years ago or 43 years ago, we were there, and we think about that. Those were special times. And also all the shows up in New England. College in Boston was a complete, other than the friends I made, was a complete farce. Never went to class, very rarely, academic probation. I squandered it completely. Never went anywhere or did anything because we were always getting stoned in our room. I have a lot of terrific memories, but a lot of regrets of the lack of seriousness with which I undertook my studies. I was prolific in getting parking tickets, though. I will say that. But I was awful as a student. But the one class that I do remember that sticks with me to this day is the history of jazz with Tony Cianano. That changed my life. It has nothing to do with what I do for a living, but he was amazing. And the way he taught about jazz was fabulous. And I remember that to this day. So, but I loved college. I loved the freedom of it because I wasn't serious about it. And I went through a lot of growth there. My dad lost his business and the rug was pulled out from under us, and it was a lot of transition. It was a rough time. It was not easy to keep your head on straight during all that. I mean, our whole family dynamic changed. I'm in college, it was a weird time. And I got odd jobs and made it work, but wasn't serious because I didn't connect the dots. I didn't understand what it took to be successful or to figure anything out until I was 29. That's what it takes to learn sometimes. You don't learn in a classroom. You learn by living. Oh, God. Dave T. Watson, the Reverend Lemonhead. Lemonhead didn't know that he was Lemonhead until I told him he was Lemonhead. Because I hired him. We did a shoot in New York City and with Bruce. And I'm like, hey, Lemonhead. And he's like, He's like, I'm Lemonhead. I go, yeah, we were calling you Lemonhead. And I thought he knew that because his head was shaped like a lemon. That's what I thought. I thought his head was, but I love him. Oh, man. And Bob. I mean, Dave T. Watson, the Reverend, Karam, Bob, right? I mean, that whole group was just ridiculous. We're still all friends, but holy crap. I mean, the nonsense that we did. And really, we have a resume of nonsense, of just complete ridiculousness. And I'm really proud of that, because it was real. And we channeled the other side with things like the Frugal Gourmet or some of the drum circles we would have. But it was fabulous. But it was also disturbing. It was fabulous in a disturbing way. But I love those guys. They're brothers. And there's nothing, Bruce Goldman, he's gold. He was just, when they burned their room down, and oh my God. He had to write. What did he have to write? Don't fuck with fire. That's what he had. He had to write like some sort of PSA because he set his room on fire. So he had to do this whole campaign, to clear his name or go back to school. And I didn't realize that was a real turning point for Dave T. and Bruce, really. I mean, that was trauma. The world today is fucked up, run by assholes, and racist motherfuckers. And it's flat out disturbing, and it's a lie. It's all been a lie. And, you know, I often think about, you know, we raised our daughter, and people raise their kids and they buy them books like The Little Train That Could, but it really should be The World's a Fucking Shithole, Johnny, you know, or The Little Train That Said Fuck It, it's ridiculous, you know, or it's rigged, Fred, you know, or, you know, the world is I just feel like we lie to our kids about what the world really is like, and then I look at my daughter and it's like, I can't explain this to you. This is not how we raised you. You know, this is not, sorry to mislead you with, you know, all the really nice books that were lies by Dr. Seuss and all that, you know, that tried to make kids tolerant, and then they get out in the real world and it's like, every example that you try to set gets shit on every day by that orange fucking buffoon in the White House, you know, and then you realize, you know, how hard it is it's going to be for your kids, and that's heartbreaking. Best lesson your father taught me is play the long game, build relationships, represent yourself well. That's what it is. Be real, but never look for the short clothes. Never look for the easy clothes. It may take a while, but I'll get something. You know, something will happen. I'm building something with everything. One thing leads to another. Network, open doors. That door opened, and open another door. That's how I did my career. You know, that's how I navigated by that lesson, because I watched him. A man build himself up again after making mistakes, and he was tenacious. And when I moved back home and saw that, that changed everything, and I respected him immensely because there was no ego. It was just, I got to get this done, and I'll get business from you one way or another, but I'm going to be good to you. We're going to get along, and I will be in touch with you, and I'll earn your trust. And that's what I learned from him. He was amazing at that, and I don't know too many people like that. The meaning of life is in the moment. The meaning of life is in recognizing the moment and the subtlety in the moment. Whatever that subtlety is, whether it's a sound or a smell, you know, or a sight or a taste, you know, it's the meaning of life is in the moment. Anything beyond that, you're lost, right? The meaning of life has to be now, how you feel, and accepting yourself and being present. That's the meaning of life, I think, is the moment and self-acceptance. And being kind to yourself and kind to others, but being present. Definitely.